Hello, DM Geezer Jim here. We are back. We're working on our series on fiends, closing out the demon part of this thing as we are going to take a look at some of the specific layers of the abyss. Last episode, we looked at some of the greater demons, demon princes, demon princesses, demon lords, aubrynths, a few of those things. So we're just going to kind of close things out by looking at some specific layers, some of the fun locations. That TSR and Wizards has presented over the years in for gameplay in the Abyss. Now, it's it's infinite, so there's no guidebook, there's no even collection of works that has ever been made that tries to describe every layer of the Abyss or any of that. That's, I think, by design, so us as Dungeon Masters, as world builders, have space to do what we want with it. But we are going to take a look at some of the specifics, both as they connect with their demon princes and some unique locations that can give you some examples of gameplay, some geographic features, things like that. We're only going to look at two books, really, for this video series. We're going to be looking at, as we're seeing on the cover here, the Hordes of the Abyss, Fiendish Codex 1 from D&D 3rd edition, and we will look at a section out of the Planes of Chaos box set from 2nd edition Planescape. A lot of the information that's made since then is redundant, so these are just kind of two kind of catch-all sources to do a quick tour of some of the abyssal layers. So I'm going to read directly from the 2nd edition book here, Planes of Chaos. The infinite layers of the abyss. Not even the governors have been able to count the layers of the abyss, though it's not for lack of trying. No one knows whether there's an infinite number of layers or whether most of them are just so deadly that not even powers call them home. Although describing the planes of the abyss is a thankless and endless task, most any cutter is glad to flap her bone box with what she knows or doesn't know about it. It seems that everyone but the clueless, in Planescape parlance, clueless is material plane folks, has a tale to tell about how bad it is. In fact, it's always worse because words really aren't enough to describe the nightmare of the abyss. Realms and layers are often one and the same in the abyss, as each power and even the lesser abyssal lords don't tolerate intruders on their layers. Though the struggles may take aeons, the result is always the complete submergence of one entire layer into a single realm. Several well-known open and independent layers answer to no one because no lord or power permits a single ruler. Most famously, the Plane of Infinite Portals. A similarly crucial point is the Gateway Layer of Durao, a major debarkation point for the Tanari off to fight the Blood War. Continuing on, this is a brief catalog of survivable layers. Reference 2nd edition Planescape. Things have been added on and changed a little bit since then, but not much. The more well-known layers and realms are named, described, and numbered below. Each number refers to the order in which the layer was discovered and recorded in the sigil records by the governors, not any relationship between the layers themselves. Of course, most of the discoveries were very unpleasant ones. The current count is 679 layers, 141 of them habitable by most planers. Direct portals from Sigil to the Abyss only reach the Plane of Infinite Portals and a limited number of other layers. Some other layers are known only by reputation, their entrances on the Plane of Infinite Portals having long since been forever sealed. These are called the Lost Planes of the Abyss. The sealed zones where each summoned gate only loops back into itself, no matter how powerful the summoner. Many abyssal lords dread finding themselves in one of these pocket planes, helpless until someone releases them. Many other lords, of course, are struggling and paying a bloody price to find out the dark on how to put their enemies in there. The cross-trade in rumors and half-truths is a quick one. So one of the layers we're going to look at, and again, so we're just kind of in audiobook for the next little bit. There's some fun descriptions here. So yeah, hang on, kick back, enjoy it as we read from Planes of Chaos. The Realm of a Million Eyes. One of the worst abyssal realms is the 6th layer, the home of the Great Mother, ruler of the Beholder Pantheon. Every form of evil beholder and beholderkin dwells here, preying on one another, and any Tanari foolish enough to wander into the crossfire. The next one is the Phantom Plane. The Phantom Plane is the 7th layer of the Abyss, though it has long been sealed against intruders. Weary of the blood war and far from the front, Sesenek is one of the few Tanari demons who spent little time concerned with the blood war. Their gates to this plane, often called Kirakanen by the Tanari themselves, are all sealed. An extraordinary effort would be required merely to release the locks. Sesenek is worshipped by lizard men, and his realm is rife with lizard kings that are his servitors. 12 trees. The 12th layer has been abandoned since the Tanari lords captured 12 devas and brought them here to be sacrificed. It's haunted by their tortured cries, which makes conversation impossible. 12 trees is the site of much diabolical magic working, for the fiends used the place where the devas died as a power focus to enchant engines of war and magical amulets capable of destroying the Batizu. The greatest project currently underway is a flying construction called the Ship of Chaos. See page 26. Sidebar, there is also a adventure that was published for during second edition for Planescape. I think it was called Into the Abyss, and the Ship of Chaos was the feature of that. Anyway, sorry. The next site we're going to look at is Blood Tour. This was the site of a Batizu incursion into the Abyss, one of their greatest successes early in the Blood War. The 13th layer is now the realm of Bashaba, the Maid of Misfortune from the Forgotten Realms. Her realm contains both the black stags that are her totem, as well as bad luck that haunts visitors to the realm. The reddish waters of the Blood Tour are also home of Umberlee from the Forgotten Realms pantheon, the bitch goddess of the seas. The Iron Wastes, a bitterly cold plain of ice miles deep. The Iron Wastes are the province of frost giants who serve Kostichichi, their demon lord. Devoid of most life, the 23rd layer of the Abyss is illuminated by a single distant light, no brighter than a moon. Here Kostichichi trained the first frost mages who dwell in the glacial citadel, an ice fortress carved into moving ice between two towering peaks at the height of the plain. Spring never comes to the Iron Wastes, and most of its inhabitants live deep underground in strongholds or caverns. Loth's Web, the Demon Web Pits. Also featured in multiple adventure modules. I think we took a look at a couple of those when we talked about Loth. She's technically considered a goddess, not a demon, although she started out as a demon in Fiend Folio and then has since been elevated in multiple editions to godhood. This infamous place is a convoluted plane that connects to the prime material worlds where the Spider Queen Loth has worshippers. The plane folds in upon itself so that it resembles a great web. 4 strands of tunnels wind through infinite mists, each strand looping in a circle, and each strand passing somehow both over and under each of the others. Each strand is strung with gates into the planes where Loth is strongest, as a string is strung with pearls. Loth's palace is said to be a mobile iron fortress perpetually crawling across her planar web. Her lair is the 66th layer of the Abyss. Smaragd. The 74th layer, a realm of ever-shifting colors, is a radiant emerald jungle of heat, acid, rain, and fermenting poisons. The jungle floor is difficult to find, as the forest has seen as many as 7 canopies in place. The jungle is the home of Murshalk, god of the Yuan-Ti, as well as many roving tribes of Barl-Guras. Murshalk slumbers in a vast set of snake-infested pits and caverns, and is uninterested in being roused from his slumber by anything less than a direct threat. Most who intrude on his caverns are simply devoured. The rest survive only because of the power's all-consuming sloth. Ramenus, Monster Man, or the god of the bullywugs, also sleeps in a realm within Smaragd, though his resting place is an enormous hollow tree. His Denari followers call him the sleeping god and offer him sacrifices by placing them within his perpetually open mouth. Other than vipers, boas, pythons, venomous toads, acidic rains, Smaragd is relatively quiet and benign for a layer of the Abyss. Its dangers are more passive rather than active. Pausing 1 second. Sorry about that. Next up is Gaping Maw. Before we get to that, I went ahead and switched screen formats because I kind of wanted some really interesting art in the Planescape stuff. That Tony Dieterlizzi did outstanding work in this, and a few other artists, primarily his artwork. And it looked like a interesting picture of a web and a demon and all that, but when you really kind of zoom in, you start getting the scale of Planescape, as you see down here on these little threads as your adventurers with a drider chasing them. So this is art out of the demon web, as it were, but also indicative of the scope and the size that comes into play when you get into the outer planes. 5th edition modern D&D tends to make everything medium-sized, medium in nature. A lot of things are lost in scope and scale in the descriptions. It's nice to get the visuals once in a while that kind of put the holy crap into the things, if you will. Gives you as a dungeon master, as world builders, as GMs, a visual so you can do a better job of describing it to the players. So next up, the next layer we're looking at is Gaping Maw. This is a layer of briny water and rocky prominences used as a rookeries by flying Tonari. The depths are ruled by Kraken, Ixochitl, and their Lord Demogorgon, whose stony home is guarded by the most powerful representatives of each of his servant races. Many wastroliths make this lair their home as well. The area above the water is only the slightest portion of his palace. Most of it is underwater, in chill and darkened caverns that have never seen light. The Tonari Lord hoards his strength, attacking the Sahuagin from time to time, and only rarely exhausting his strength in the Blood War. This is the 88th layer of the Abyss. Next up is the Rotting Plain. A pungent expanse of baking dry savanna and shallow swamplands is the home of Leogzid of the Troglodytes, the deity of the Troglodytes, a gluttonous eater of carrion and spirits, supposedly the offspring of Panzuriel and a reptilian Tonari mother. This stinking toad lizard creature was quickly banished from Panzuriel's realm. Leogzid seems to have barely noticed. Food simply becomes something more difficult to find. Leogzid serves other powers as a planar dumping ground, since he devours everything regardless of its origin or foulness. Whatever he devours becomes part of the substance of the plane, so other Tonari often dispose of items permanently by placing them within a tasty morsel before the ultimate scavenger. Leogzid also devours herds of least Tonari and those who disturb him with petty concerns, anything other than food. The Rotting Plain is the 181st layer of the Abyss. Shadokla, the 222nd layer of the Abyss, is more commonly referred to simply as the Slime Pits, a bubbling morass of oozing fetid sludge. Its landscape is little more than the name implies, with vast expanses of caustic and unintelligent slime. Strange organic forms are believed to rise from the ocean of molds at the whim of Juiblix, who rules a portion of the plain. The remainder of the plain is the province of Zugtmoy, the abyssal lady of fungi, a dread and fell ruler of the abyss. Together with Ayaz the Old, himself the son of an abyssal lord, she established a temple of elemental evil and for a time wrought death, destruction, and a great suffering. Then the forces of good fought a campaign against her, and she was surprised and bound during the intaking of the temple. The opposing clerics and mages confined her somewhere beneath the ground, reputedly with the aid of one or more deities. Until she is released, her realm will continue to slowly rot and crumble. Zugtmoy's realm is filled with Askamids, Bessadrions, black puddings, brown molds, brown puddings, dun puddings, gray ooze, green slimes, intellect devourers, ochre jellies, olive slimes, ficamids, russet molds, all the different olds. Sidebar, remember your timeline. This is in 2nd edition. Temple of Elemental Evil hadn't officially been broken open in the timeline, so she's still trapped there. Hence Shadokla being more taken over by Juiblix. As the timeline moves forward, she returns, Juiblix gets pushed underground. Durau is the next layer. Durau is an open layer that serves as the embarkation point for many Tonari hordes on their way to Gehenna. It consists largely of a set of rusting iron wharves and barracks built between a fetid section of swamps and the sluggish waters of the Styx. When troops march through the sprawling iron streets, which is most of the time, the entire layer seems to reverberate with sound. The Tonari use enormous barges to ship their troops, though the Marinloss are paid a small fortune to pilot these barges down the river. Other than rusty piers with access to the rest of the lower plains and the horrifically deformed creatures of the swampland, which the Abyssal Lords consider good hunting, the lair, numbered as 274th by the governor's count, has nothing to recommend it. Sulfanorum. The 303rd layer is a place where Tonari come to relax and smoke a pipe of dried flesh, dung, or whatever it is that they smoke. The foul stuff clogs the air, making planers and pilgrims alike wheeze and ache with each breath. The stench is almost unbearable, though it doesn't bother the Tonari. Fires are constantly burning, pouring smoke and filth into the skies. Sulfanorum's fires are weak, though. It's just enough to light a pipe or start incense smoking. The Worm Realm. A set of endlessly twisting tunnels dug from constantly collapsing clay, earth, and stone. This, the 399th layer of the Abyss, is the burrow of Erdlin, the mole god of evil gnomes who digs out from each collapse. The realm grinds up most visitors and suffocates and poisons the rest. Its inhabitants are gnome petitioners, manes, purple worms, Hezru, and umber hulks. Oddly, many of the creatures of the worm realm suffer from florid fungal and cancerous growths that rot the victim from within after 2 to 12 months. Long-term visitors to the realm eventually contract this disease as well. Speculation among the bargainers is that this disease is a result of a feud between Erdlin and Zugtamoy, but this is impossible to confirm. The Woeful Escrond. This is one of the few layers of the Abyss that follows any sort of pattern or order. Throngs of petitioners and new arrivals are herded from the entrances to the lair over treacherous terrain towards the lair's single visible feature, a great mountain. The gates exiting the plain are all within the central mountain of woe, but these gates are strictly guarded by Nalfesni, who are the primary occupants of the 400th layer of the Abyss. They sit on mighty thrones of flame in the mountain of woe, they herd more creatures towards judgment. From atop their thrones, the Nalfesni, also known as the Lords of Woe, cast judgment upon the mortal life of forces that pass into the Abyss, more dreadful than the judgment of the governors in Sigil. Rumors are whispered on the pits of despair where the worst petitioners are sent. So, sidebar, if your character is when something chaotic, evil, and mortal passes, and it's destined to go to the Abyss, if they do not worship a god, this is where their husk, their soul, their larva, their whatever ends up, and the Nalfesni judge them and move them into the Tanari, the demonic chain of existence, as it were. Remember, if a creature worships a specific power, they'll go to the realm on the layer that power holds. If not, if there's just general chaotic evil nastiness, this is where they end up. Next up is Yeenagu's Realm. This is the dismal and fetid 422nd layer of the Abyss, a layer of endless yellow forest and dun savannas where the Null God and his retinue hunt the lesser Tanari and any visitors. The grasses are edged as sharp as daggers, thorn singers and strangleweed is common, and the water is infested with parasites and diseases. Since Tanari are immune to poison, the waters themselves are venomous. Yeenagu, rules the lair from an enormous pile of cracked bones that looks like a white mountain visible from most points. Those who've disobeyed or displeased him are added to it at regular intervals. This has been updated in later editions. Keep that in mind. The next up is going to be the Prison of the Mad God. Just looking at my time real quick. The 586th layer of the Abyss. This layer serves as nothing more than the prison of Dinkarazan, the mad god of the Duergar. It's a swirling vortex of air and gas with rings of whirling rock flying about its central point. Dinkarazan is magically bound to a stone throne at the center of the storm. The plane constantly distorts space, much like a distance distortion spell that varies from 10% to 80% in value from minute to minute. Cursed and banished by Il-Sensine, the power of the Illithids, the mad god cannot be freed by anything less than a greater power, and he is permanently insane and tormented by illusions of the things he most fears. Terrible monsters, Il-Sensine itself, drowning in water or larvae, and the like. The chant is that the high-ups stop raving once every 50 years because he's obsessed with revenge and kills visitors even when he's sane, as like as not. The prison always torn between slipping over into Carceri and slipping into Pandemonium. The balance of prison and madness keeps it in the Abyss. This is the Caverns of the Skull. Kali. Lore and legends. This would be your deities and demigods. Hindu mythology. Rules a place of perpetual blood, sacrifice, and suffering. The plane is home to bloodthirsty four-armed Zorn, eye-wings, fetch, fire shadows, and hordes of fanatical petitioners. The petitioners constantly slaughter one another and are reborn to kill again. Likewise, the layer's caverns are constantly being created and destroyed, and only the goddess knows what tunnels will seal up what next. Visitors are gristle for the altars. The caverns have no regular gates. They're hidden near the most powerful proxies. These gates can only be activated by slaying the proxy. The caverns are cataloged as the 643rd layer of the Abyss, though governors assume that many travelers found their way into this layer before anyone found a way out to tell of it. So the plane, there's a couple more, a couple more entries to get into a little bit more detail here, and we're gonna go ahead and read through. Why not? Where this is the last entry into our section on the fiends. So let's get into. This is kind of draws it all together. We talked about the lesser ones, the little critters from all the way up from your Dretches all the way up to Nalfesni, including the Baylors. Molly Diaz as well, and then we talked about the Demon Lords. The locations kind of pull it all together. So the Plane of Infinite Portals, the gateway to the Abyss. The plane is the site of constant activity, transience, and banditry. Few stay long, and those who do long to gather power to themselves. Everyone passes through sooner or later, but that doesn't mean the trip is pleasant. It's all the universe's bad parts of town put into one place. There is no single power that rules over her. Instead, the Plane of Infinite Portals is a planar crossroads ruled by mobs of Tanari that form spontaneously from packs of wandering outcasts and deserters. These mobs may have stronger and weaker members, but they all depend on numbers for strength, not on heroes. A mob of anything more than least Tanari is fully capable of tearing apart one of the iron fortresses of the plane. The ruins of these fallen strongholds are quickly recycled by the strongest members of the mob, who sometimes succeed in keeping the mob together long enough to establish a new stronghold of their own. Those strong enough to do so are considered the powers of the plane. The description here. The Plane of the Infinite Portals is the top layer of the Abyss, a dim, barren place baking forever beneath a bloated red sun. Innumerable holes and huge iron fortresses dot the landscape. The holes are conduits that lead to the other layers of the Abyss. The fortresses are strongholds of the individual Tanari lords, where their bodies are protected by slavishly devoted servants, while the Lord's spirits traverse the material planes, the astral planes, and the prime material, seeking corrupted and evil types to press into service. Sidebar. That was kind of spoken of earlier when we got into the Abyss and the demons. Most of your demon lords have a stronghold on Pazuzu, the Plane of Infinite Portals, that when they're out gallivanting around, they come here because they can access it from their home and go home under their own control. And number two, they have these gigantic iron fortresses that their physical form is defended in while their material form is moving about. Okay. Other than the gates themselves, the most important single site on the Plane of Infinite Portals is the region known as the Lakes of Molten Iron, a series of crucibles varying from white-hot to red-hot to darker but still malleable shades of red and black. All the fortresses and all the weapons of the lair come from these perpetually smoldering lakes where the true Tanari forge weapons in the walls of their huge fortresses. In fact, this area is so crucial to security on the plane that Batizu and Yugoloth forces have several times attempted to lay sieges to the Lakes of Molten Iron, hoping to establish a defensible beachhead into the Abyss. None of the attempts have succeeded thus far. The river Styx runs in trickles near the town of Styros, but most of the plain is a mass of red dust, bone, and rust. Smithies are sometimes set up near the holes. They burn charcoal brought through the gates, but therefore there is nothing on the plain worth making a smithy fire with. Only a leatherhead tries to smelt iron with dried Tanari dung. Nothing grows here, nothing organic to burn other than people. So you're going to bring in charcoal. Principal towns. One of the largest strongholds of the plain is Gallows Gate, the home of Geronda. This is a Marilith. Geronda is a Marilith with dreams of settling down as barmy a cutter as there ever was. She commands a single Garisto, 3 Babau, 7 herds of Armanites, and a horde of Mains and Rudderkin. Gallows Gate is a ramshackle town falling apart despite the best efforts of its inhabitants. The Doom Guard is very popular in Gallows Gate. Most other visitors are added to the food stores. Styros is a barracks town, or at least a barracks corral, where the Molly Day herd their troops together and attempt to get them aboard ships and send them down the Styx to the battlefields of the Blood War. Success is limited, but the supply of troops is large enough that losing half of their number to drowning is considered an acceptable casualty level. The town itself is a collection of barely habitable longhouses separated by streets of finely churned mud. The wharfs are in better condition, though the docks do collapse regularly from overcrowding. Any Tanari, Tiefling, or evil planar within 50 leagues of the town is considered a deserter, rounded up and shipped to the front. The portal town of Plaguemort, the gate town in the Outlands, is securely hidden within one of the oldest and most stable fortresses, a place called Broken Reach, or simply the Reach. See a different description on page 25. Not going to stress on that. We'll probably get there. Special conditions. The Plane of Infinite Portals is a crossroads of the abyss where planers may meet in any and every type of Tanari. The plane is also a staging point for shipping troops towards the front in the Blood War. The Mali Dea are very vigilant in rounding up deserters, and pressing visitors into service is common as well. Since the roving press gangs are everywhere, the best ways to avoid a forced one-way trip to the Grey Waste or Bator are to stay out of sight, bribe the Mali Dea, expensive but possible, or gain the patronage of a Tanari lord. Principal non-player characters. Geronda and others like her are often interchangeable. The true powers on the plane of the infinite portals are the mobs and the Mali Dei. The mobs are easily avoided by any Burks taking precautions. They're loud, large enough to raise clouds of dust, and direct in their violent approach. The two most infamous of the Guardian Tanari on this plane are the White Shadow, a pale, sickly-looking Mali Deus from Azagrat, and Tarn Shaf the Grim, who is also a Mali Deus, a perpetually frowning taskmaster prone to taking chunks out of anyone moving too slowly for his liking. They tirelessly pursue Tanari who are dodging the blood war, and they leave racks of severed, skewered, and hanged slackers and deserters in their wake. White Shadow and Tarn Shaf are also purveyors responsible for procuring supplies for the army. They commandeer what they can and send it to Styros. Anyone they meet is required to make a contribution to the cause. Those who can't are drafted. Services, weapons, and even rations of a sort are all available in most any stronghold, but the price is rarely measured in gold. The Tanari prefer slaves, weapons, magic, and blood in payment, though they'll take jewels. Coins don't interest them, so buying anything involves hours of haggling or paying an outrageous price for a quick purchase. A few planers wander from point to point selling ore, whetstones, anvils, banners, and the like to anyone with money, but these tinkers are hardened by their association with the Tanari and are as likely to bob a customer as they are to sell her their wares. They usually travel in guarded caravans with passes of safe conduct. The passes don't guarantee that they'll return, though. Next up is Broken Reach. This is the abyssal side of Plaguemort, the gate town on the Outlands. Broken Reach is a place that doesn't give anyone second chances. Any basher who isn't prepared won't last through the first night. The Reach takes the measure of anyone and it devours the weak. For the strong, the Reach is a gathering point, a rallying point for followers, a place of fiery speeches against the Batizu. It focuses power and attention. Combat is forbidden by the Reach's rules, but death matches are commonplace just outside the walls. Broken Reach was founded 201 years ago by Red Shroud, a succubus, a flame-haired task mistress who has made her reputation as a poisoner and a font of dependable information. She still rules the Reach, and under her guidance, its thick walls have protected its inhabitants against 5 determined assaults, including attacks by mobs, Gethzerai, and even a minor abyssal lord. Behind the throne, rumors suggest that some of Red's consorts have some influence over her, but no one would care to venture that opinion where others might hear, unless he felt sure he could give her the laugh. Her steely grip on power is as secure as it gets in the abyss. Red's current consort is her 4th since founding the Reach, an Alfesni named Ygrax the Skullbiter. Originally a usurper making a bid for power, he is still powerful enough to project an aura of menace and brooding threats over the Reach's halls, but Red keeps him in line. During his attempted power grab, he was wounded in combat with a Garisto, and since then no one accused of Ygrax of having an abundance of brains. He seems content with a life of dog-like panting wherever his mistress approaches and slavish obedience to her every whim. No one is sure how much of it is idiocy and how much of it is an act. The description: Broken Reach is a set of crumbling towers surrounded by outworks of trenches, walls, and spiky barricades. Most of the important sections of the Reach are underground. The portal to Plaguemort itself is beneath the main hall, sealed off with a 20-ton slab of basalt whenever danger threatens. The food stores, the arsenal, the interrogation halls, the crypts, where the first factor of the Bleak Cabal is said to be buried, and the Red's chambers are scattered widely and linked by narrow tunnels. The rooms for guests are all small but lavish chambers directly off the main hall. The militia, Red's authority covers everything within the Reach's walls, and she doesn't allow vendettas from elsewhere to threaten her guests. Likewise, the Mali Dei are encouraged to search for conscripts elsewhere. But Red does demand obedience from all of her guests, and they are expected to help enforce the Reach's fragile peace whenever anyone breaks the truce. Sometimes she orders the death of someone who simply enrages her, perhaps by their wearing turquoise, an oracle told her the stone is unlucky, or by snoring, or by ordering cheap drinks. Sometimes she does it just because she can. Sidebar, she is still chaotic evil. This is still on the abyssal side of the Outlands Portal Gate Town scenario. If they were too lawful, if they followed too many rules, if they were too ordered, then Broken Reach would technically shift back into the Outlands, and a new gate town would have to be founded. That's part of the Planescape lore. I'm going to kick up my Planescape series again, and you guys can learn more about that in future videos. So, services. The Reach keeps good supplies of food and drink on hand, and its armory can outfit a small company of mercenaries in times of need. But Red likes to turn a hefty profit. All costs are triple the usual. Holy symbols, holy water, and similar items are not available at any price. Succubi and incubi are sometimes sold at auction. These are Red's immature offspring, who she thus disposes of before they can threaten her rule. Local news. The Reach has been hosting an ambassador of the Bleak Cabal, a dwarf with a withered arm who has been sent from Sigil to investigate rumors about the grave of the faction's founder. No one is sure if Red's playing him for a fool or if she truly does know where the body is. Red's famous smirk is all that anyone has been able to wring from her about it. Stories also have begun to surface of a raid that is supposed to go off against Mithrengo, the nearest fortress on the plain. Some say Red's planning on expanding her little empire. Others claim it's to eliminate a rival, and still others say she hopes to claim a new consort. No one seems to consider the possibility that she's not behind it at all. A couple more in this book, and then we're gonna we'll see what time's like. I don't want to go more than an hour, so we're gonna go through this one, and then we take a look at the Hordes of the Abyss. Some of this stuff is going to be redundant, but some of it will also update. More detail about less layers when you get into this one. So, but anywho, let's continue doing what we're looking at here. Plains of Chaos. The Ship of Chaos mentioned earlier. The keel of the first of a fleet of engines of war has been laid down in 12 trees. Necromancy and hundreds of larvae are said to be necessary to manufacture just its frame. The Doomguard are said to be involved with finishing its construction. Rumor is that the ship is to be used in a major drive against the upper planes. Dun dun dun. The Tanari waste little time on the upper planes, and this skull-proud monstrosity is no exception to that rule. The Ship of Chaos is meant to be deployed as a weapon of war against the Batizu in the Blood War. For the Tanari, the Ship of Chaos is a minor advance, but it's the pride of the Doomguard, who've been promised one of every 7 ships completed. Special feature. Bound by fiendish enchantments and run with the energy of crushed spirits, the Ship of Chaos is an entropy weapon that magically disrupts the close formations of the Batizu, making it easier for the Tanari hordes to overwhelm them. The effect is similar to Dragon Fear, though it affects any level creature. Though the Tanari won't admit it, mages of the plains have doubts about the ranges of the ship's effect. If this is true, the Tanari may rethink their agreement with the Doomguard, much to the faction's dismay. Azagrat, major realm here. Hidden evil lurks, flaring into violence as a spark can flare into an all-consuming fire. Let rage build until it must be released. Corruption is behind every facade, and no one in no place is ever trustworthy. Lurk like a viper, then strike. Bloodbaths are tools for rulership. Grazit, the Abyssal Lord. We talked about him at great depth last video. Grazit stays hidden in the shadows, but knows all of the secret gates and paths between the 3 layers of his realm. He tries to maintain a surface decorum that makes first impressions favorable ones, but in his heart, Grazit is just as depraved and wicked as any of his uglier cousins. His infrequent rages are beyond description. His anger can shift entire towns between the layer of the Triple Realm and can flatten mountain ranges. Like all Abyssal Lords, he spends much of his time and effort in gathering strength on the prime material plane. Description of the realm. Azagrat is a confusing set of 3 planes that are constantly overlapping and moving through one another, with gates opening between the three frequently and randomly. Because all three layers are ruled by the same abyssal lord, they resemble each other closely and have strong magical connections. Some they say that the three will one day fuse into a single layer. One of the common threads between the three is the River of Salt, a sparkling, crystalline mass of moving minerals that are somehow liquid and solid simultaneously. Creatures unfortunate enough to fall into the river are subjected to the grinding, rasping masses of sharp salt crystals. Anything that isn't choked by the dust is usually reduced to a reddish paste within a 1d6 plus 2 rounds. Sidebar, depending on your edition, you'll adjust the mechanics if you're doing that. From place to place, there's open gates between the three layers, gates that resemble ovens of green fire. Walking into one of these gates leads from one realm to an oven on one of the others. Tanari are unaffected by the normal fire, but sods who aren't ready for it are in for a hot time. 2d6 fire damage. Unfortunately, some of them are ovens of green fire. These are the sources of much amusement to the Tanari. They like to watch the clueless walk in and out of the flames, trying to move on to the next layer. The flickering flames make the glowing outline of the gate difficult for even some planers to find, so Wise Cutter will watch to see if the Tanari use a sight or not before getting burned. Viper trees are common in all three layers of Azagrat, and groves of them stand around many of the realm's palaces and towns as protective barriers. Rumor has it that at least one of Grazit's layers was part of the Grey Waste that has shifted into his realm, and this accounts for the large number of Viper trees. Others claim that Grazit's cunning is responsible. Principal towns. The best known of the Triple Realms towns are actually always connected to one another and to the Plane of Infinite Portals. The connection between the three are murky to any mind less chaotic than a Tanari's, and sometimes makes travel here extremely frustrating. The towns themselves are often clean and even beautiful, though. The streets are still mazes. The horrors of Azagrat are hidden better than most of the terrors of the Abyss. Screams from behind closed doors are more common than blood in the streets. If a basher doesn't poke her nose in it, she might not learn what she doesn't want to know. The largest city of the Triple Realm is Zelatar, a city that crosses the boundaries into all three realms. Even more so than Sigil, its doors and entryways often shift. Some say that the entire town is one of Grazit's experiments, an attempt to recreate the portals of the Cage. Zelatar's all you fiends, Cambions, Nabasu, Shadow Fiends, Slow Shadows, Succubis, and Tieflings all seem untroubled by the three realms. They're puzzled by planers who find it difficult to navigate amongst the three, and they claim that the three realms are no more different than day, dusk, and night anywhere else. Zelatar's town crier Mephisto is a well-known Knight of the Post. This is a bard, not Mephisto PH, Mephisto F. Mephisto can be bribed to cry false news about the town, and many of Zelatar's most powerful use this service often. Strangely enough, the Tanari don't stop listening to Mephisto just because half of his news is a pack of lies. Sometimes, much to Mephisto's discomfort. They consider it amusing to figure out what's what, sometimes to his discomfort. However, no one is crass enough to kill him or injure him enough that he can't make his daily rounds. If it doesn't make sense, but then not a whole lot about the Abyss does make sense. A basher would be smart to avoid the Argent Palace, Grazit's abode of 66 ivory towers and 100 cold mirrored halls, if at all possible. The palace is a frighteningly clean, echoing place where visitors often lose their guides to the ravenous mad Bodax and worse creatures that Grazit releases from his dungeons occasionally for amusement. The palace is said to contain a direct, mature conduit to the Plane of Infinite Portals and other layers of the Abyss, as well as conduits to Pandemonium and Gehenna. A summons to the Argent Palace is not a social invitation. It's a sign that Grazit is displeased. All Tanari turn stag against a fiend receiving the invitation, carrying him bodily to the palace if he doesn't go willingly, and tearing him apart bodily if he resists. Surprisingly, a few fiends do survive a visit to their lord and return to society much less driven by rage and much more cautious in their treachery. Special conditions. The first layer of Agrazat, the 45th layer of the Abyss, is somehow doused, muted, or subdued. The screams and torments of the lesser and least Tanari and unfortunate planers are just as common, but somehow fade into the background. Things just don't stand out. Nothing feels noticeable. Everything seems equally gray. This general fading makes stealth easier for everyone all concerned. All attempts to move silently or hide in shadows gains a 10% bonus. and all creatures gain a +2 to their chance of surprise. This first layer of Azagrat is difficult to keep in mind. Travelers report they can't remember details of the landscape or towns they saw there, though they remember the creatures and goods. Berks can also fall into the Viper Forest of Zrintor on this layer. The second layer also suffers from peculiar lighting. The sunlight that illuminates the plane rises up from the ground rather than falling from the sky, as most Berks expect. Azagrat's shadows are very stark columns. They rise like shafts of darkness into the sky. The sky itself is dark by day and turns gray by night. This is the 46th layer of the Abyss, and it can be reached more readily via the 45th layer rather than via the Plane of Infinite Portals. A tunnel within the city of Zelatar is the best connection between the two. The third layer of the Triple Realm is lit by a blue sun, and heat and cold are magically interwoven here. Flames glow blue and purple on the 47th layer instead of red and orange. Flames inflict cold damage here, and cold spells cause heat damage. Though the Tenari are normally immune to fire, on Azagrat they suffer half the damage from what they would normally be fire spells. Likewise, they're immune to cold spells, instead of suffering the half damage they would here. The strange blue light of the lair makes creatures harder to recognize, and individuals often disguise themselves by coming here. The 47th layer of the Abyss can only be reached from the 45th or 46th. It has no direct connections to the Plane of Infinite Portals. Unlike other Tenari, Azagrat's fiends form a superficial society of cruel alliances, betrayals, and intermarriages with a veneer of cosmopolitan politeness and beauty. The fiends are all jaded, cynical, and relatively loyal to Grozit because the Abyssal Lord has personally destroyed all the disloyal fiends and all of his opponents for generations. A few non-player characters and services, and then we're going to get to Thanatos, and I think that'll be I think Thanatos is going to be the last ones we'll look at in this book, and then we'll flip to the next one, just to keep things moving along, because this is going to be a long video. So, rolling back. Karnaki the Quick is a powerful planer capable of commanding the Tenari of the Triple Realm. This is actually going to be a paladin, a planar tiefling cleric of the 14th level. He rules from a weathered tower in the midst of the first layer, though he often leaves to find amusement elsewhere. He's known for wearing a skull codpiece and well-tailored vest inscribed with protective sigils. Other notorious characters include Moretta, the Lady of Counting House, who watches over the revenues from Grazit's pacts with creatures of the Prime. Moretta rules a haven of pleasure and discipline in the underground core of Samora, a city of vice that pays huge yearly tributes to support the Blood War. Moretta occasionally sends a legion of Cambion to the front, but for the most part the city is a haven for those avoiding the war. It's one of the few places in the Abyss built with an eye for the excessive ornamentation. Some say it's as blinding as Mount Celestia, but much gaudier. Once, a Garisto is a destroying angel who has leveled cities and fortresses. He wears a black crown of adamantite and black opals that are signs of his servitude to Grazit, and rumor has it that Grazit often rides or possesses Once, using the crown to accomplish missions requiring great strength. An alert Burke will hear the flight of other Tenarian planers when Once approaches. Omarana the Doomgiver, she is a planar fighter, is considered a reliable source and sometimes guide through Azagrat, though that doesn't mean much in the Abyss. Bassers say she's looking for something or someone, but the dark of it is she's looking for a way to remove a silver ring that binds her to the Abyss. She can't stand being imprisoned, even though her prison's bigger than she'll ever be able to see. Azagrat is much friendlier to merchants and trade than most layers of the Abyss, ensuring them free passage and a protective guard of Cambion, all you fiends or tieflings who watch over them. Occasionally, the creatures of Azagrat do, in fact, reprimand or devour those who harm merchants. However, every merchant is expected to leave much of his profit as an offering to the Garisto that watches over the gates of the plains. Rumor has it that the creatures know when it's being shortchanged. Others say, bar that, it's just Grazit peeling the clueless. Some bubbers talk big, but few hold out at the gate. The last up for this tome is going to be Thanatos, the Belly of Death. And this is mainly, we're going to look at this because this has been kind of a shift. This shows how, this is a good picture of how the layers have changed over the editions as timelines and stories have, been published and affected the products. Another picture of you can kind of do what you want and do and undo what you want with a lot of these layers because TSR and Wizards has done it and has made a change, retconned it, and then re-retconned it before. It's been published that they do whatever they want. So us as world builders, as GMs, can do whatever the heck we want as well. So Thanatos is a great picture of what is, and then when we look at the next book, what it became. Thanatos, the Belly of Death. Sidebar, you've heard me mention this a couple times when we were talking about Orcus. Character. All is silent, frozen, and watchful, waiting to drain any spark of life that arrives through its glowing gate of fire. Patient, deadly, and utterly without mercy, Thanatos proudly displays its rot and corruption for all to see. Even after death, the Belly of Death does unspeakable things to its victims. The power. Kiransali, the drow goddess of vengeance and the undead, recently wrested this plane from the former abyssal lord of the undead, Orcus. That lord's name is never spoken now, as Kiransali has decreed that it must be struck from each monument, slave band, and scroll. Kiransali is said to wear a cloak of rattling bones that causes fear in all living creatures that hear it. In the winter, she rules from Naratir, the city of the dead, where vampires serve as her counselors and specters as her generals, and her legions include the Baobao Driders and Armenites. In summer, she rules from the Forbidden Citadel. The petitioners of her realm are those she has slain. Vasad wants to visit Pykit. The realm's cold powers regularly devour plates of larvae, dretches, and visitors. Thanatos is known as the 113th layer of the abyss. It's a cold plain of ice, thin air, and a black moonlit sky. A place that belongs as much to the undead as to the Tanari. Nothing can truly be said to live here. There are no fields or forests, not even the twisted groves of the abyssal viper trees. Mosses, molds, and fungi have grown in warmer regions, and scraggly tundra struggles for life, but there isn't much that's both edible and palatable. Of course, few of the dwellers in Thanatos need physical sustenance. Principal towns. Although most of the plain is a frozen necropolis, 2 towns are worth noting, surrounding Kiransali's summer and winter palaces. Naratir is the site of her winter palace, a cold realm carved into the surface of a frozen ocean. Its carpets are woven from the hair of its former occupants. The Forbidden Citadel is upstream along the river Styx from Naratir. It's a dry, hilly region. It's a summer realm of festering flesh, and the town surrounding it is called Lacrimosa, the Cauldron of Tears. The town is kept warmer than the majority of the layer by a series of rust-red geysers that spurt steam and water into the Styx. The bodies of zombies, ghouls, wights, and other decaying undead often lashed together and floated down the Styx to Naratir, where they become skeletons, wraiths, and other undead creature in service to the Tanare. Special conditions. Creatures that die on the plane of Thanatos are almost immediately transformed into its servants, generally undead, but occasionally mains, dretchers, or rudderkin as well. The transformation requires only an hour or so, and there's irreversible from the plane's petitioners. It can be halted for planers and primes by raise dead or limited wish spells, and can be reversed by resurrection, shape change, or wish. Undead in Thanatos all regenerate at the base of 1 hit point per turn. Not the fastest hit point, but everything regenerates here if it's undead. More powerful undead retain their faster rates, but begin regeneration in the same round that they're wounded. The thin air of Thanatos reduces the constitution of living creatures by 2 points while they visit, with corresponding losses of hit points, ability checks, and endurance. Nothing less than heal or wish spell can reverse this effect. Principal non-player characters. The most important servants of Kiransali are the stewards of her 2 palaces, Rotting Jack and Anista of the 8 Eyes. Rotting Jack is a Babao and Anista is a Drider. Rotting Jack lives up to his name. He perpetually sheds his rotting skin, which crawls with maggots, and he even loses a pustulant eye from time to time. He fancies himself a ruler and hopes he can convince a few abyssal lords to back him and grant him enough power to seize the plane from his mistress. Kiransali is aware of his treachery, but is amused by it. When he becomes dangerous, he'll be chastised, but until then, she allows him a certain amount of latitude. Anista is the ruler of the Summer Palace. She wears a crown of eyes, a magical item that gives her 360-degree vision and prevents her from ever being surprised. She's high-strung. Any basher clearing his throat behind her is likely to make her jump. Sleepless, the Molly Diaz who marshals this plane's forces for the Blood War, seems to be in many places at once. Every Tenari on the plane fears him. In fact, Sleepless is a set of twins who pretend they are a single creature. Anyone that finds out otherwise is slain. Undead slaves and servants are readily available for any Burk willing to stand the stench, and the cost is right enough. Not more than 1 or 2 copper per day to rent one. Tenari often have huge entourages of entirely useless servants merely to impress others. Most durable goods are unavailable. Food costs double or triple the usual prices. The Dustmen are the most powerful faction on this layer of the Abyss, and they are available as guides to visitors. They demand at least 10 gold pieces a day, often more, but they do know where to find the best air, food, and water. Most undead ignore travelers that are accompanied by a Dustman. Narratir, a town that we're going to take a look at. It takes a strong stomach to walk down a street in Narratir with hanged men and ghouls on every side. Called the City of the Dead, Narratir is the home to warring bands of vampires, banshees, and specters, all striving to outdo each other in the fawning service to their mistress Curansali. All of them are constantly searching for new servants and converting weak or unguarded visitors into undead to placate their harsh goddess. The nominal ruler is Curansali, the drow goddess of the undead and vengeance, who issues decrees from her nightmare throne of zombies and skeletons in the Forbidden Citadel. The day-to-day ruler is Rava Cormrel, Curansali's most powerful priestess from the Prime, behind the throne. Though he only rules in summer when Curansali has left the palace, Rotting Jack is a power who transforms the town in his mistress's absence. The militia is called the Ivory Mace, a ragtag gang of ghouls led by ghasts and wraiths. The captains of the Ivory Mace are a babau who wields carved and enchanted thigh bones as clubs. Using these clubs, the undead captains can sing a death song once per day with effects equal to a banshee. Living creatures can use the power of the clubs as well, but they're subject to the effects of their own songs. Services. Few services are available to any creature other than Tenari and intelligent undead. Food, drink, and a warm bed are available at the bottomless well run by Crimson Maul, a constantly muttering wight who cleans his mugs obsessively with a bloody rag. The customers may still live, but their shuffling gait and numb speech are signs of their deep weariness and helplessness. For better company, but worse atmosphere, the last meal provides for the needs of the city's elite. Its meals consist entirely of the energy levels that sustain the lords of the undead, and its entertainment comes from Ladislas the Cruel. A bard is famed for his use of a spiked flute, and a carefully sharpened lyre is for soul-rending compositions. Even a blood's got to watch her back here, but she can learn a lot from what bloodsuckers talk to what. She can learn a lot from what bloodsucker talks to what phantasms here. Rumors constantly circulate as much for entertainment as for information. Most recently, a flurry of whispered stories has surfaced about Kaletra, a priestess of Loth, who recently appeared as a banshee seeking to serve the mistress of undeath. The conflicting tales speculate that she betrayed her former patron, that she was granted a seat at Curansali's feet, or that her experiments had turned her into a lich and thus brought her under the power's sway. And we're going to go ahead and stop in this reading. This is going to be an extra long video. But that is 2nd edition Planescape Planes of Chaos box set, a very deep dive into the Abyss, a lot of detail, although the timeline is a little bit older than the current 5th edition 5.5, whichever timeline whatever edition you're looking at. Unless you're playing in 2nd, then this is your current. I'm going to pause the video real quick, and then we're going to get back for the Fiendish Codex 1, Hordes of the Abyss, to take a look at some stuff there. Be right back. Okay, moving on, we are going to just briefly touch on the Fiendish Codex Hordes of the Abyss 3rd edition book. This is probably, even though Planescape's Planes of Chaos, Blood War, Fiends, Guide to the Fiends and all that, a huge library of books, great amount of detail. I still personally believe this is kind of the best catch-all. The 3rd edition Fiendish Codex 1, Hordes of the Abyss. It's kind of a great one-stop shop. Doesn't have everything, doesn't have all the details, but it does give you the best overall view of things. Now, as we kind of look into it, they don't give us nearly the amount of descriptions of layers that we got in the Planes of Chaos book we were reviewing a second ago. They do go into far more detail, including locations and maps and things like that about each of the layers. But for our discussion, everything that we would look at here is kind of redundant, just a little bit prettier. Pezunia is still considered the layer of portals. We do get a couple specific locales and some information on the denizens. So we're gonna kind of pick and choose as we read through here. No need to really reread what's already been spoken on. We're just gonna what the additional information that came in this book we'll go ahead and read. So the denizens, more chaotic evil petitioners, manifest as mains on Pezunia than upon any other layer of the abyss. Local demons hunt these creatures for food or press them into warbands, driving vast herds of petitioners through the pit gates and into the deeper abyss. Some remain on Pezunia to marshal the defenses of demon lords inhabiting iron fortresses. Demons view these pitiful creatures a little more than living shields and sacrifice them with impunity. Many mains willingly flee down unexplored pits merely to escape their pursuers. Note one thing above, sidebar, terminology will interchange in the 3rd edition book between demon and Tanari. We are now post-Satanic Panic, so we can use our regular terminology. Molly Day Eye press gangs wander the lair, picking off stragglers and collaring them into the town of Stios, there to depart upon the river Styx to the lower planar battlefields of the Blood War. The massive two-headed Tanari seldom take on demon lords entrenched in iron fortresses, but they eagerly thrust wandering, unaffiliated demons into their press gangs. Molly Dei are also tasked with provisioning the army and demand tribute from all they encounter. Those who cannot give are immediately conscripted and sent to Styros, and thence to the raging wars of the lower plains. Surprising number of merchants, mortals, and outsiders alike brave the treacherous plain of infinite portals, for Pezunia's gates lead to unparalleled business opportunities. Those who fly the flag of the Dark Prince Grazit enjoy the best protections against banditry, but even this is far from foolproof. The following creatures dwell on Pezunia and command considerable clout. Pazuzu, the lord of the aerial kingdoms. We talked about him a little bit. Aldanok is the demon princess. She delights in the perversion of pure and innocence, but her methods aren't as subtle. She commands a growing cult. Really kind of that's really the we're going to get into. It restates Broken Reach. One thing that is pointed out here is the Grand Abyss. The Grand Abyss, the cliff walls of this great tear in the fabric of the abyss, bearing an infinity of portals to other layers of the plane. Considered a layer of the abyss in its own right, it's covered in detail below. And we'll get to the Grand Abyss in details below. So, as world builders, as DMs, Pezunia is really easy to use for your campaigns. There's portals to it, to and from it, from a multitude of places. The plane of 1001 closets, all that kind of a thing. So, it is a good arrival point. The Molly Dei that are moving around here will take payments, will take bribes rather than outright attacking. This is one of the few places in the Abyss that you can use without being necessarily story-driven, I guess you could say. Just a dipping your toes into the Abyss, as it were, or also it gives us the convenience of a transit plane. We may not necessarily want to make our player characters deal with each and every demon lord as they go through the different layers. So part of your campaign can be using navigating the Grand Abyss and Pezunia as they go through the layers themselves. Gives us a good alternative, a nice place to play around with. Agrazot, again, just finished reading a bunch about that. There's not a whole heck of a lot that we need to explore in regards to the addition on there. And likewise, the Demon Web. We talked a lot about this already when we were looking at our lovely Lady Loth. Now, Thanatos, I do want to drop on this one because this is a perfect example of how things change even within the publication cycle. Layer number 113, Thanatos. Ruler is now Orcus. Orcus, the fat-bellied, ram-headed prince of the undeath, is one of the most powerful demons of the Abyss. Even some of the plane's deities hesitate in fear upon the briefest mention of his name, for Orcus is more than just a demon. He is a legend that grows stronger and stronger with each revolution of the Great Wheel. Sidebar, when we were looking at the Planes of Chaos, remember, there was like, Kiransili rules the lair, and the ruler that was here before her shall not be named. There was not one mention of Orcus within the Planes of Chaos's entries, sticking with that storyline. There is a module called a campaign book called Dead Gods that actually addresses the rebirth and the growth of Tenebris back into Orcus, but that's a 2E to 3E transitional thing. Sorry. So anyway, Orcus began life thousands of years ago as a wicked mortal whose vile deeds eventually resulted in his death. Thereafter, his soul manifested upon the abyss as a larva, then a mane. In that form, he toiled long centuries under the lashes of now-forgotten demon lords, eventually managing through sheer will to evolve into a Rudderkin. The Demonomicon of Igwilf suggests that Orcus next became a Nalfesni, and he sat upon the 400th layer Court of Woe during the era of the Githyanki revolt against the Illithid Empire. Eventually, Orcus conquered the 113th layer and became a demon lord with the appearance he retains to this day. Ash-gray clouds fill the coal-black skies of Thanatos, the belly of death, where daylight never intrudes. The layer's immense melancholic moon changes phases at random when covered by clouds, making time difficult to measure. A handful of cities crouch upon the layer's vast tundras, havens for the mortal, and immortal cultists who seek to emulate the life of their demonic patron. Outside the cities, roving bands of thousands of undead roam across the land in search of flesh. The strongest and most ambitious of Orcus's thralls attempt to dominate and command these armies, leading them on invasions of the material plane and the layers of rival demon princes like Grazit and Demogorgon. Due to the layer's minor negative dominant trait, all living mortals on Thanatos will take necrotic damage each round. Death Ward and similar spells negate that damage. Because of the thin air, all creatures also must succeed on Fortitude Constitution saves each hour to resist becoming fatigued, exhausted in 5e terms. Very little plant life exists on Thanatos. Mortals wishing to find sustenance must rely upon the indigenous molds, mosses, and fungi. And that's really kind of it there. Just really kind of, again, I wanted to point out the main change was the no mention of Orcus whatsoever. Cransley and her servants, now all of a sudden she's gone. Not even mentioning that he retook his lair. The cult of Orcus seeks to follow in his patron's blasphemous footsteps, crawling through the ranks of demon kind to become demon lords in their own right. Demonic members cherish their mortal memories and consider their entire existence as part of an ongoing continuum. Orcus urges his mortal followers to wreak great subterfuge and destruction upon the material plane. Leaders in his order call themselves Skull Lords and often command numerous undead creatures and servitor demons, as well as an egalitarian cult, a lech of cultists from all walks of society. Orcus. Here's a little bit here. Those who have served Orcus longest claim that the Prince of Undeath was once mortal, and his long struggle from larva to Balor to demon lord instilled in him an instinct for survival that allowed him to cheat death itself. Centuries ago, the drow goddess Caransili deposed Orcus, who had grown complacent with his endless campaign of stalemates with Grazit and Demogorgon. But even a treacherous death was not enough to destroy Orcus forever. A sliver of his essence survived, taking the name Tenebrous and forever changing the multiverse by discovering the last word, an utterance so powerful it could kill gods. As he scoured the great wheel searching for his infamous wand, Tenebrous used the last word to slay several deities, including the Illithid god Manzikorian, the Archomental Wimp, and Kamaxlil, the Lord of Fate. Eventually, Orcus reassumed his previous name, form, and vigor and deposed Caransili to once again command all of Thanatos. Orcus has no particular affinity for the undead, seeing them as useful tools in the struggle for more and more power. So on and so forth. The Prince of Undead returned to Thanatos only in the last few years, and much work remains to remove the taint of Caransili and her worshippers. Those demons that swore fealty to the drow goddess have generally met with destruction or conscription as part of Orcus's tribute to the Blood War. A few mortal and intelligent undead followers of the vengeful Banshee remain in secret enclaves, quixotically plotting revenge against Orcus for slights to their divine patron. His wars against Grazit and Demogorgon continue, with lesser players such as Zugtmoy and Malcontent becoming more difficult to ignore. Alright, so the City of Straight Curves, Everlost, a few more locations in here. But yeah, we're pushing a little bit over an hour now. But again, if you are using the Abyss, Planes of Chaos gives you a lot of overall content of planar interactions and the minor planes of the Abyss, but the Fiendish Codex, Hordes of the Abyss, gets you a lot of detail about the major layers of the major players, including maps, diagrams, some lesser stat blocks, things like that, encounter tables and like. So the two of them really work well hand in hand. 12 trees was mentioned, as was the Iron Wastes. A few more entries, into some of the minor The Wells of Darkness is an interesting place. The Gaping, on and on. So it's a great addition to your library if you're playing in the abyssal, yeah, playing with demons, playing in the abyss. What's up? Right. All right. So that's gonna wrap up our Fiends section on demons. Next up will be devils. It's going to be probably longer because knowing, in my opinion, understanding devils is also understanding the histories and the intricacies of the relationships between the archdevils, their various layers, and all that. We won't have to spend as much time on the volume of work, but there's a lot more in regards to the overlay and the interlap between the archdevils and all that stuff. Fun stuff. Politics. Sorry, infernal politics incoming in our next few videos. But hey, man, thanks for being patient. Thanks for hanging out with us. Hopefully you're enjoying the series, and hopefully it's providing you some information. I know there was a lot of reading in this one. I'd rather give you guys the information, read it from the book, and present you with the source so you can kind of own it rather than say, just take my word for it. Just trust me. Sometimes I forget shit. I don't trust myself, so it's important to have these videos out and have the material present as we're looking at it. Encourage you to do the same. As always, thank you for your time. Likes, follows, subscribes are appreciated. Join us over on Twitch. We're there Tuesdays through Fridays, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. U.S. Central Standard Time. That stuff's down on the About stuff on the YouTube page here. Love having you along. If you watch these videos and you have some questions, man, we can get into real time, ask and answer these questions, look up some more details about it. You can do the same thing. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you have questions, if there's anything more specific that you want. We're getting into a little bit more of a production cycle again, so I should have time to make specific videos even. So, but again, likes, follow, subscribes, join us over on Twitch for live chats. Let your friends know. We're doing really good on hours watched. Would love to get some more people involved in the channel. So if you know some people that might need this information, man, share the link with them. Thanks a lot. We'll see you soon.